My name is Alex. Been breeding and keeping reptiles for about 20 years, 20 plus years now. Started with bearded dragons, worked my way into monitors, been breeding monitors for the last 15 years. I keep Odatria species, which are dwarf monitors, and I also have lace monitors and Spencers, which are my two largest species. But today it's about the Egernia complex. It's a very intriguing complex of lizards that come from Australia. They're viviparous, which means that they give live birth. Every single species does, which is quite unique, and they also have pair bondings that they do say that they pair for life. However, that remains to be seen because there's so little is known about them. It's been, just since 2011 that Egernia Skinks was reclassified, as was Egernia epsisolis. So before, all these animals used to be clustered into Egernia depressa. There's one more that isn't listed on here, or actually it is Egernia eos, which was also branched out to become its own species. And then we have Egernia depressa southern form, and then we also have the northern form. So out of this complex, 5 branched out and became their own species since 2011. I recently started keeping these. It started with COVID when a lot of imports came in from Europe, so I acquired some epsisolis, some signitos, and some depressa just to diversify bloodlines here in the United States. I don't have Egernia eos, they're very hard to find, but always looking just to be able to diversify the bloodlines here in the US. So I do keep 3 different lines of each species, so hopefully that'll present itself the opportunity to have some new bloodlines here in the US versus the ones that we've had here since the 70s and 80s, which are captively bred, and obviously we want to stay away from inbreeding as much as possible. So hopefully once these animals are in their prime now, they're ready to, they've reached sexual maturity, we're going to be able to offer those to diversify bloodlines with other breeders in the future. All right, so without further ado, let's get started. So I'm going to be talking about captive management as much as possible. Again, we're all treading in uncharted waters because of the fact that these animals aren't really kept here in the U.S. as much as some of the more common species. They're very closely related to blue tongues. Blue tongues are a lot more popular in the trade now. However, they're getting a little bit of popularity as the rise of social media and reptile keeping have gone together in unison. More and more people are dedicating, just separate pages and whatnot on Instagram, just dedicated to Egernia species. So it's gaining traction in terms of its popularity. So we're going to start with Egernia stokesii, which is the first species that I acquired when I started looking at Egernia and bringing them into my collection. So captive management, this is the largest distribution of Egernias, of the larger Egernia species. Their captive management, so my enclosures are aligned horizontally. I use both wood and rock structures, just make sure that they're very secure because they are actually really strong animals, despite the fact that they have a diminutive size. They do like to move things around quite a bit. So I use a hot glue gun just to secure rocks and cork tubes, so that way nothing gets moved around, and most importantly, so that when they do have babies, the babies aren't crushed by something falling off or something just being mismanaged by one of the adults. The basking spot, I keep it very hot. Australia is very hot. I keep the basking spot between 100 and 120 degrees Fahrenheit. Usually it's sitting on some rock structure or a half cork tube, something like that. I do keep the ambient temperatures around 75 degrees, so there is a night drop, it's acceptable. I just shut the lights off on a timer, and then my building stays somewhere between 72 and 73 degrees overnight. That's usually in the summer. Everything's brumating, is just coming out of brumation right now, so the temperatures are going up. UV is very essential with these animals. They're extremely diurnal. They love to bask out, probably more underneath the UV spectrum than they do under the hot spot. And because these animals are omnivorous, I usually feed 50 to 70% plant matter. So collard greens, dandelion, endive, anything that I find in my garden. So I just throw it in there. Whenever I'm cutting stuff up for the tortoises as well, it goes right into the Egernia as well. And then 30 to 50% insects. I breed my own dubia, giant mealworms, and superworms. So brumation, like I said, they're just coming out of it. I usually start them in late November, so right before Thanksgiving. I'm a teacher, so I know that Thanksgiving break is when I put them all under. So that's when I start my brumation processes. The reason why this is important is because if you look at their distribution map, they do have that cooling period in western southern Australia. Because of the fact that they need that, it just improves your breeding successes, and it improves just their lifespan as well. These animals can live up to 25, 30 years, so brumation is a key component to that, making sure that they're going through all their life processes under captive management. What I do, it's very simple. I reduce temperatures down to 60 degrees. Sometimes it fluctuates. It can fluctuate down in the 50s. I just put them in like a sterlite bin individually. The smaller pygmies, I will keep them inside the enclosure because they're just too small, and I want to make sure that I'm always tracking their weight, because they can lose weight a lot faster than the larger ones. And then I usually do it for about 6 to 8 weeks, which will encourage the reproduction. Like I said before, they're live bearing. Stokesii have the largest litters of any of the Egernia complex animals, so it's usually 1 to 5 offspring, varies by age. There have been documented instances in Australia where they've had up to 8 offspring, but I haven't encountered that here in the United States as of yet. Social structures are completely and utterly important for these animals. You don't want to keep them as single animals, just because of the fact that they do have those social interactions, which make keeping them so enjoyable. Distribution for Egernia Stokesii, from western Queensland all the way to New South Wales, and then all the way west to Western Australia. There's a very small pocket. It's like a little micro territory, which I'll show you with the subspecies that I also keep of Egernia Stokesii on the next slide. It's actually an island form, so we'll take a look at that now. So if you see that little tiny arrow here, okay, the Hoopman Abrolhos Island, that is the most western point of where Egernia Stokesii lives. So Egernia Stokesii Badia, it'll probably be reclassified as Egernia Badia. There's enough conversation now happening where there's enough morphological differences where it's going to become its own species. So kind of like what happened in 2011 when Egernia depressa branched out into 5 different species. We're looking at this probably being another situation like that. Captive management with Egernia Badia, pretty much the same. The only thing is they come from coastal grassland scrub area, so I, instead of using rocks, just use a lot of wood. There is a blotch form, and then there's a black form, and then the black form, believe it or not, is the one that lives in the rock crevices. So it's kind of interesting that the darkest one that doesn't match its territory or its environment is the one that's actually living in these orange rocks, whereas the blotched one is the one that's living in the wooded scrubland areas. So care is exactly the same. I do go a little bit longer with the brumation just because of the southernmost point of Egernia in terms of where they live. So I do go a little bit longer. I could go up to 10 weeks for their brumation just to encourage that reproduction to happen. Again, live bearing, they have smaller litters, but their offspring are actually larger than Stokesii. And again, social structure is super essential for their success. They have the smallest distribution of all the larger Egernia species. So when you look at Badia, okay, it's right here, and then that black form that we're looking at right here is that small dot there. So again, from Western Australia only. Okay, this is the only area that they're found, and then that it's restricted to Shark Bay, and then the wheat belt is this tiny little pocket right here, the wheat belt. We talked about the blotch form versus the black form, and this is the only Egernia species aside from the Egernia skink that is listed as an endangered species by the Western Australia Commonwealth. So I was very fortunate to acquire a pair of these from a group that came from Germany. So hopefully, fingers are crossed that we get good luck this year. They're 3 years old now, so they should be reproducing for us this upcoming spring. Hosmeri, which is the species that you all got to look at today. This is the northernmost distribution of the larger Egernia species, restricted to Queensland and the Northern Territory, so it's actually the one that lives in the most tropical parts of Australia. As you can see by the background, there's lots of green, lots of lush, also a lot of rock, as is most of Australia. Again, large, horizontally oriented enclosures. I use rock for these, as you can tell. The coral color tells you that their environment is rocky outcrops, which you see in the picture here. Basking area is the same, ambient temperature is the same. Again, same kind of diet with 50 to 70% plant matter. The brumation, I go a little bit less because they are a lot more tropical, so I put 6 to 8 weeks there, but these came back early February when I brought them back up from brumation. These can have, so Egernia hosmeri can have up to 4 offspring. It varies by age. The sexual maturity for these animals is a lot more. It's a lot sooner than Badia, which it takes like 3 years. These guys can start breeding as of 18 months of age. Hence why it's such a shorter brumation period for them. Being from the Northern Territory and whatnot, they don't experience the colder snaps like Badia and Stokesii do. And then again, social structure completely, utmost essential for them to be able to have that captive management success. Keeping these animals in singles is not conducive to their well-being. They need that social structure and building those family bonds and family groups. This is the smallest species that I keep, Egernia striata, which is the tree skink. Okay, so this is it's actually related to like the emerald tree skinks that you see from Indonesia and the Philippines, but this is the Australian form. It doesn't lay eggs like some of the other tree skink species. This is a viviparous, live-bearing animal as well. But it also has the largest distribution map of any of the Egernia species. It goes from all the way up North Queensland, all the way up into Arnhem, all the way down into the southeastern portions of New South Wales and things like that. So this animal actually inhabits different micro-territories and habitats, from wooded forest to rocky outcrops, and then it lives in rainforests as well, up in northern Queensland and the Northern Territory. Captive management, pretty much the same. I decorate their enclosures with nothing but wood, and they really, really prefer hollow logs to get in and out of. They're a very fast-moving skink, super intelligent, and you can decorate their enclosures with live plants as well and make it bioactive. It's not a problem because they're so small that they wouldn't tear up your plants. So again, night drop is acceptable, UV is essential. This is the only animal that you would feed fruit and sap from, so I actually use crested gecko diet for them because they do lick the sap from trees and fruits that are ripening out. So and then you're just substituting the plant matter with fruit matter, and then 70% insects for them. They have a mild winter, so cooling, does improve breeding success. I get these guys back up and running a lot sooner. So we're looking at mid to late January for them. And I reduced the temps only to the mid 60s. So I don't go quite as cold as some of the other ones, just because they do come from a more tropical climate. And believe it or not, these little animals can lay up to can give birth to up to 6 offspring. So varies by age, but a big female has been known to give birth to 6 offspring. Yeah, that's pretty much it for striolata. This is the only, there is an albino form. It's only bred in Australia right now. So albinism does exist in Egernia striolata. Right now it's only available in the Australian market. So we'll see if it ever makes its way out. You know, at some point all these animals made their way out in one shape or another. So. Egernia depressa. So this is the animal that started my curiosity with this complex, dating back to when I had keeping and breeding Australian lizards. It's a giant book which has like every single Australian lizard that's been, you know, discovered in this massive continent island. So. But yeah, this is what started it, and this is where all those 5 from my initial introductory slide, my title slide, come from. So back then, back before 2011, the corals, the pilbara, and then the southern and northern form of depressa were all just listed as depressa. So this is the one that started it for me. Captive management for them, again the same. What's interesting about depressa is that they're endemic to mulga trees. You won't find them anywhere else but mulga trees out bush. So you try to replicate that by having hollow cork tubes or hollow, you know, oak trees and whatnot. Basking's the same. Night drop, essential with UV, of course. These guys actually love plant matter, so they love flowers. So if you can get yourself some dandelion flowers or just any flowers that you find in your garden that obviously haven't been exposed to pesticides, they love flowers. And then insects, and I'll show you some of the commercial food that I also feed them as well, is also very good for their nutrition and making sure that you're upkeeping with their really fast metabolisms, because these in particular have very fast metabolisms. Mild winter, again, they are from Western Australia and they do veer a little bit further south, but the silver forms that I keep are a little bit more northern, so I do keep them down to 60 degrees and then reproduction again, or actually for 6 to 8 weeks, and then reproduction again, up to 4 offspring. Very rare to get 4, usually it's 2 to 3, but 4 has been documented. And again, social structure, again, it's like every single slide, it's super essential to their care, making sure that you keep these animals in pairs or, you know, a breeding pair with its offspring. So out of all the pygmy skinks, these are, Egernia depressa has the largest distribution. Again, mulga trees only. You won't find them in rocky outcrops. Anyone that's ever showed you a picture of Egernia depressa on a rock, it's been placed there. It's not in situ, so this animal only occurs in mulga trees. Okay. So Epsisolis, now we get to the colorful ones. So this is Egernia exosolis. This is the coral pygmy skink. So this used to be what, you know, a part of Egernia depressa. In 2011, it branched out and became its own species for obvious reasons, right? It sits north of where depressa actually inhabits, and then obviously the color mutation is totally different, and then other morphological differences as well that were documented to create them their own species status, as was Egernia signitos and eos. This is the largest of the pygmy skinks, so they can get quite big. A big female can be about 6 to 8 inches, so it does get quite big for it being a pygmy skink. Again, large horizontal oriented enclosures. I actually paint my rocks the same color in the enclosure so that it matches the environment that they come from. Most of my rocks are like an orange terracotta color, so that they can camouflage a little bit more and make it look more naturalistic. Again, make sure that they're very secure. I try to glue mine down with some Gorilla Glue just to make sure that no accidents happen. They like it extremely hot. Where they come from is it's extremely hot. So I definitely get these guys up to 120 degrees. And again, just plant matter and insects make up the bulk of their diet. I also give them hard-boiled egg. It's super important to get some hard-boiled egg in them because it helps the calcification, making sure that they're getting the proper D3 inside of them because they do have large litters for being such a small animal. So they've been known to have up to 4. There's a breeder in Germany that had 6 recently. So for it being such a small skink, they do have very large offspring, as you can see here. So this was a rock that was flipped, and this is a family of a mated pair, and obviously the babies from one season and the other. So as you can tell, they have a very harmonious relationship in these microhabitats that they inhabit. Again, 6 to 8 weeks on the brumation. I reduced the temperatures to 60 degrees like all the others with the exception of striolata. And then like I said before, you will not find these animals in any other colored rock unless it's like orange, coral, or red. There's a little bit of silver in between, but the majority of the time that you'll find these animals, it's like it's kind of interesting that the outcrops are like meters away, and there's a family of Epsisolus living, or a group of Epsisolus living in each one of these microhabitats, and some can be hundreds of meters away. And you'll just find them in social family structures in between all the different outcrops in this area. This is Egernia Skinks. So this is probably the least known of the pygmy skinks. This is an animal that comes from a coastal area all the way down into the Pilbara region. So if you've ever seen Varanus pilbarensis, it's a dwarf monitor. It's the exact same color as Egernia Skinks because they inhabit the exact same habitat. They've actually documented both of them living in the same crevice or hunting in the same crevices. So again, just a very striking animal in terms of the way that it looks. You know, through evolution, it's managed to captivate the same color as the rock outcrops that it inhabits. Nothing different from this and Epsisolus. Again, another 4 offspring. This is a slightly smaller animal, so 4 is actually the largest that's ever been documented. And again, this actually has a much smaller distribution range than Epsisolus. So if you looked at the Epsisolus map, if you were to put all these together, there's an overlapping happening right up here between Skinks and Epsisolus. So yeah, the care is pretty similar between the two. The only thing that I do differently for them is I put their rock structures vertically. They like to hang out in vertical structures, as you can see here. So I just manipulate them so that they go vertically and they actually feel very comfortable in the structures. Commercially available foods that I offer them. So I love the Rapashi stuff, Bluey Buffet, Grub Pie, and Grubs and Fruit. The grubs and fruit is mostly for the striolata. I mean, I do like throw some into the other species, but mostly for the striolata because they do like to lick a lot in terms of like when it's been documented out in the wild, sap and ripening trees or ripening fruit. They love to lick the juice out of those structures as well. And then again, these foods are used in conjunction. It shouldn't be your base staple diet, but I use it in conjunction with insects, dandelions, greens, and then berries for the larger species, and then always supplement with vitamin D3 and then other multivitamins. So yeah, this is you know, the beginning of what is, you know, a complex that is very, very new to the hobby, I guess you could say. I mean, they're more prominent in Europe, and it's been, you know, documented that they've had more success in Europe, but we're hoping that we could bring some of that success here to the States so that more people can enjoy, you know, this little complex of lizards that we don't really know much about in terms of, you know, what happens out bush as well. But, you know, we try to do the best we can with what we have here. And again, with these new bloodlines that we imported from Europe, we should be able to diversify and minimize the inbreeding that's been going on here since the late 70s and early 80s. Yeah, that's my presentation. So, any questions? Yes, Terry.
Well, if Australia doesn't export, how does Europe get them for us to get?
So, what usually happens in Europe, they don't have a Lacey Act that is as stringent as ours, so they do get excess stock from zoos. So my lace runners came from the same kind of situation where there was an excess stock from zoos. We imported them, we were able to keep them. Spencer had the same thing, and then the same with some of these Egernia complex animals. My Badia come from zoo stock, so as long as you have CITES paperwork for everything, there shouldn't be any issues. I've imported lots of species that were from Australian origin, but because they were reproduced over generations in zoos across Europe, they become excess stock and then they become available to the general public. Yeah.
How big are their tanks?
So that's a great question. All of my larger species, like the Hosmeri, the Stokesii, and the Badia, they're in 4x4x2s, and then I put universal rocks attached to the back for the Stokesii and the Hosmeri, and then I have cork slabs 36x18x18 for the Badia, and then the smaller stuff like the little pygmy skinks. These guys are all kept in 36, 24, 24 PVC cages.
When you said 4x4x2, is that too high or 4 high?
It's too high. Yeah, because I stack them. So.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
What's the maximum number of animals that can cohabitate?
So that's a great question. Undocumented, like I said in that one picture with the Epsisolus, it was 2 generations underneath one slab of rock. I don't usually keep them for more than 6 months together, so I separate the babies from the parents because I usually either sell or trade for new bloodlines. So I don't know, to be completely honest with you. And in Europe, you know, they do the same thing, so they're constantly exchanging bloodlines. So no one's really gotten to the point yet because, you know, we're all trying to diversify bloodlines of an animal that, you know, we really don't know that much about. And it'd be an interesting experiment, right, to see how many can cohabitate. You know, they have to be part of the same family structure. If you get one colony and introduced to the other colony with mature animals and babies in it, they will fight. So that's been documented. So when you are diversifying bloodlines, you grab a male and a female, you brumate them separately, and then you bring them back together in the spring so that there's cohesion there with the reintroduction.
So do they mate for life then?
So it's been documented, like they've done some surveys where they found the same male and female over and over and over again. Not to say that they mate for life, but it's been happening for a few generations now. So again, like real work didn't come into this complex until 2011, so it's all relatively new still in terms of what they're surveying and seeing out there. Because at some point in time, everything was just Egernia depressa and everything was just Egernia stokesii, and now we're starting to see all these subspecies branching out. Yes.
When pairing them together, Heather, is there a percentage of rejection? Like how likely are male and females to be compatible versus rejecting each other?
Yeah, that's a great question. And initially, when we all started working with these animals, we tried to do it before brumation or during the middle of the breeding season. There was a lot of rejection. Now that we've come to the consensus, and talking with some colleagues over in Europe, introducing them during brumation or after post-brumation, I should say. So you brumate them together, right? So that they're able to get, the pheromones and whatnot, within the same vicinity. And then once you put them together and you fire them back up, you start heating them back up. They're already used to each other because they kind of like slept together in the same vicinity. That they've gotten that sense of, oh, I know you, you know me. Now we can, cohabitate in the same enclosure. But before any of this was even experimented with, rejection happened all the time. Animals would fight to the point where we'd have to amputate, limbs because of the fact that the fighting became so severe.
So you said they need a structure, but how many do you keep then? Is it just one female and one male, or is it more than, and then there's offspring, or is it more?
I have trios, right? So I have one male and two females for Hosmeri, and I have a pair. I have a patternless form, which is this one, and then I have a more blotchy form. So I have a pair of those and a trio of patternless form. And then everything else is kept, with the exception of another trio of signitos that were brought in together. So I kept them together. So the breeder that I got them from, he's Dutch, and he just told me you can keep them together because they all were cohabitating together. So I just did that, and they've lived harmoniously since I imported them. But it just depends, right? It depends on what you're trying to accomplish. If you got them together, keep them together. If you're trying to diversify bloodlines, introduce everything during brumation so that they get a sense of who they are, and then you reintroduce them into the same cage, and there's more of an opportunity for cohesion. It's not 100%, but you're getting closer to that versus trying to reintroduce them when it's hot. I had a hand here, and then I'll come to you.
I noticed you brumate them from November to February.
Yes.
But they're from the southern hemisphere where the winter is opposite.
Right.
So they've conditioned them to brumate, or is it cues with the light?
It's light, diet, barometric pressure, right? Because they're going to experience the same thing whether it's northern or southern hemisphere. The winter time outside, they can sense it, so that's why we do it from December to February, or November to February. If we were in the southern hemisphere, we would just follow the guidelines of, May through September, or whatever the case may be.
Christmas usually.
Yeah. And this is how I brumate all my monitor lizards as well from Australia. So everything gets shut down at the same time and fires up at the same time.
So if you don't introduce them during that remission period, are they territorial?
Absolutely, yeah.
And males will fight each other, and so you have to make sure that you keep them. How easy is it to sex them?
I could sex animals 6 months of age and older. I can finagle something younger, but you don't want to press too hard and have something pop out of place. So what I do is I do like a hemipenal inversion.
Okay.
So that's how I know. Males pop, females don't. So they do, but it's very small and petite by comparison to the male's structure, which comes out. It's white and it's got a purple-ish vein coming out, which is what it uses to inseminate females, and then females just don't have anything.
What is their brumation is winter, late February. What's the reproduction window? Do they have a cycle? Do they have a window cycle?
Yeah, right after. So as soon as you start feeding them and ramping them up with the light cycle and diet, courting almost immediately within 2 weeks. So I should start seeing courting behavior in the next week or two.
I know with king snakes it's March through June typically, so I figure these guys must have a window as well.
Well, they do, but we have a little bit different of a situation in terms of like, they can go, you know, a couple months and then they'll start, you know, their reproductive behavior, or they can go right after.
Okay.
It just depends on the light cycle and the amount of food that you give them. So it triggers them quite easily. And then the fact that, you know, you're having basking temperatures at 120 degrees, it really kicks them up, you know, so that's the kicker there. Like, if you don't have those basking sites at 100 to 120, you won't get any reproductive behavior from them. It has to be that hot for them, because it is that hot there in Western
So
Australia.
do you only get like one clutch a season then?
Yeah, it's a litter. So I mean, there's double. There's Depressa, and the pygmies have doubled. Badia is too unknown. Like, we don't know anything about Badia, and Stokesii has. Striolata does, because their brumation period is so, that window is so small. So they can have up to 3 litters a year.
A year?
Yeah.
Being that there's not too many in X-ray,
Mm-hmm.
are there any similarities between northern blue-tongued skinks and these guys? Like as a pet, the calmness?
Just, I mean, size, I guess, would be, I mean, if you live like in an apartment, this is a better bet for you. Your housing structure is much smaller, right?
Just as calm?
Just as calm, yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, I was curious. I know we don't know a lot about them still, because they're kind of new,
Yes.
at least study-wise. But you had mentioned earlier 20 to 30 years lifespan on
Yes.
these guys for in captivity, I would imagine. That's
Right.
what we're talking about. Do we see a difference in the different, like the pygmies, maybe a little longer lived or shorter lived that we know of just because of the size between the subspecies?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. We don't know much about pygmies as much as we do about Stokesii.
Yeah.
Stokesii has been around for a while. Like, they were imported in the 60s and 70s, so they've been around for quite a bit. I mean, there's documentation of animals being 15 and 20 years old in Europe, but I don't have any longevity data for anyone here, because these animals are relatively new to my collection. So we're getting there. I mean, I do have some animals that are getting up to like 6 or 7 years of age.
So what's the gestation or incubation period for them?
So there's no incubation for them. Their gestation happens during brumation. So like the females will kind of like go through this process, and then they'll kind of like self-incubate, and then once you introduce the males, then that's when the breeding takes place. And
No, the time between breeding and, yeah.
oh,
the
the
birth.
gestation
Birth,
period
yeah.
between about 90 days.
Huh,
Yeah,
pretty quick.
yeah, it's very quick.
When you brumate them, is there like a temperature difference? Do you drop your temperature or anything?
Yeah, so you scale it out. I start like a week before, and I start bringing the basking temperature down to about low 90s, high 80s, and then the ambient temperature will drop down to like the low 70s, and then just kind of ramp it down over a week or two, and then we get to the point where lights are shut off completely. I keep UV on for the pygmies because they brumate in their enclosures, just so I can monitor them a little bit easier. But the Stokesii and the Badia go into like sterlite bins with some mulch, dry mulch. You don't want to keep them moist during this process. And then they're sitting on the bottom at the floor level. It's like 60, sometimes even drops into the high 50s of the building. Any other questions? Sure.
So, are they agile climbers, or do they stay down low in their enclosures?
The pygmies are very agile. You could see them frolicking through rock structures. Like, I have videos of them like climbing downward and upward and hanging by, you know, one claw, feeding on roaches and whatnot. The Stokesii, not so much. They're actually kind of clumsy. But the Badia are, for being a larger animal, and then the Hosmeri, they have like, if you look at their feet underneath, their claws, they actually have wedges so that they could kind of like Spider-Man themselves in rock crevices, because they do live in rock crevices in Northern Territory. So they have like these wedges that allow them to do that a little bit easier. kind of like the picture here.
Okay.
Yeah. So the Hosmer, I would probably say is the most agile one of all the larger species, followed by the Medea, and then the Stokesia are completely just clumsy tanks that just, they'll try to climb, you know, like a tree hollow or something, and they'll just fall. It's actually quite funny.
Entertaining.
Yeah, it's very entertaining. Any other questions? All right. Sure. So I have a good friend and a partner that we started the Egernia Collective. It's on Instagram, so we have pictures and data and information of all things Egernia on Instagram. So it's a little bit separate from our parent company, which is SimContainer, and where we produce all of the monitors through SimContainer and whatnot, and the incubation boxes and whatnot. But yeah, we started the Egernia Collective on Instagram, and we try to share as much data as we possibly can there. We just started it not too long ago, and we're including pictures and sharing pictures with other Egernia enthusiasts. Got followers from Korea, Hong Kong, Japan, yeah, and a lot of Australian and European keepers as well. So you guys want to go
What's the
in?
name?
The Egernia Collective on Instagram. Yep. All right. Well, I appreciate you all for coming tonight, and thank you, Terry, for organizing this. I know it's been a journey trying to get over here. I've had some, situations where I wasn't able to come, and the presentation changed. My initial presentation was going to be about dwarf monitors, but I felt like this needed some attention because, again, not a lot is known about this tiny little curious complex of animals, and I thought, what a better opportunity to showcase them than now. So thank you all for
Thank you very much.
allowing that opportunity.